Alrighty, good morning, guys. Today you're going to watch this video on genetics vocabulary. It's very important for you to listen out for the vocabulary words and understand the vocabulary words because knowing this terminology is very important for this section of genetics. All right, if you don't understand the vocabulary words, you're going to be totally confused when it's time to solve monohybrid crosses and dihybrid crosses. So let's get started. All right. So genetics. What is genetics? Genetics is just a fancy way of saying the study of heredity. All right. And the variations of these inherited traits. Okay. So all that stuff that we inherit is in our DNA. Okay. So genetics is a study of heredity. So what is heredity? Heredity is the passing of genetic traits from the parents to the offspring. And the offspring is a fancy way of saying the child. Okay. Traits. All right. Traits are physical characteristics. All right. Such as eye color, leaf shape, tail length. If you look at the picture, if you have a unibrow, here you have a attached earlobe or unattached earlobe. If you have a cleft chin or a smooth chin, all right, all these are particular traits. And yes, there are a variation of these traits, like eye color. There's different types of eye color or type of hair. There's curly hair, there's straight hair, wavy hair, okay, dimples or no dimples. So those are traits. Phenotype are those physical characteristics, so the traits we just talked about. So a phenotype in this picture here will be black. Black here, and the physical trait we can see for this one is tan. All right. So phenotype is just talking about the physical characteristic that we can see with our eyes that's determined by the genotype. We're going to learn genotype in a moment. All right. So underline pH here because phenotype starts with a pH and physical characteristic or appearance that begins with a pH. That's an easy way to remember that. All right, chromosome. This should not be the first time you heard about chromosome. Chromosomes are made up of DNA tightly coiled, that means twisted, with the proteins. So if you look at this picture, you have your DNA and then you also have proteins that's within that DNA that's tightly coiled. That is a chromosome. And this is the shape of the chromosome when it's finished being tightly coiled, okay? All right, a gene. All right, a gene is only a segment of that chromosome or it's a section of that DNA. All right, that's a gene. And then on the chromosome is just that segment. So this is a gene for eye color. So therefore, that gene will be in the exact same spot on someone else's chromosome. Okay, so that's a gene. That gene gave this individual blue eyes. So it's just a segment of that DNA that's located on the chromosome that codes for a specific hereditary trait. An allele. Now, if you see, remember I said that this gene here was for eye color. Now, are there multiple eye colors out there? Yes. So therefore, this particular gene gives that person blue eyes. So the gene located in the same area, but this gene is a different form because this form gave this individual hazel eyes. So an allele is alternative, which means different, a different form of a gene that gives you a characteristic such as hair color. Are there multiple hair colors? Yes. So it's carried on the same gene, but that gene is going to be different because of the different variations of that particular trait. Okay. And that allele, when we talk about in genetics, it's represented by one letter. And it's all going to come together as I continue to go through this video. All right. Dominant. All right. See, that one letter is an allele. Dominant, when you have a dominant trait, it is always expressed when present. Okay. So therefore, it is always represented by a capital letter. It dominates. So whenever you have that dominant allele, it will always be present. It dominates over the other. All right. So an allele is one letter. All right. An allele can either be dominant or it can be recessive. So you see in this picture here, a dominant represented by a capital letter and a recessive is represented by a lowercase letter. Okay, so recessive trait is hidden if a dominant is present. All right, it is only expressed if both of the alleles are lowercase. So in this case, this individual is definitely expressing this trait that this allele gave them. Okay, you also see in this picture genotype. So this is our second time seeing genotype. What is a genotype? All right, so genotype, two letters that represent the gene. All right, you get one allele from your mom, one allele from your dad for every trait that you have. Okay, so one allele was given from the mom to the offspring, and then the next allele was given from the dad to the offspring. Two alleles make up a genotype. So the genotype of the offspring is big B, little b. So therefore, since the dominant always dominates when present, is always expressed when present, that's why the offspring is black. Okay, since that dominant is there, that recessive trait, which is represented by the lowercase letter, is hidden by that dominant. All right. Only way to see a recessive trait if both of the alleles in that genotype are recessive. So that's why dad is tan. Okay. Allele is one letter. That allele can be dominant or recessive. And when you put two alleles together, that makes up the genotype that represents the gene. The gene here for this genotype is fur color. Did I skip one? Oh, all righty. So now we know about genotypes. There's different names for genotypes. Okay, so you have heterozygous, or also known as hybrid. They're the same thing. They mean the same thing, just a different word. All right, so you see in red that I put hetero. So an easy way to remember this is someone is heterosexual. All right, they like the opposite sex or the different sex. Still different. It's the opposite. Okay, so heterozygous, all right, is when you have two different alleles. So therefore, you have a dominant allele and you have a recessive allele. That's a heterozygous genotype. If you look in this picture, there's only three possible genotypes there are, because the letters can only be dominant or recessive. So there's only three combinations. So there's only three types of genotypes. And the one in the middle here, that one is heterozygous. So when you say, hey, I'm heterozygous for curly hair, you know that for that genotype is one dominant allele, let's use vocabulary words, and one recessive allele. So that means one capital letter and one lowercase letter. Can we use any letter in the alphabet? You sure can. All right, you just got to make sure you do the cases based upon what vocabulary words you see. So heterozygous means different. So make those two alleles different. One capital, one lowercase. Always write the capital first. All right, so that's heterozygous. So just remember, heterosexual, you like the opposite sex, or different. Make them different. All right, so two different alleles in the genotype. That's the definition for heterozygous or hybrid. Next, homozygous is the same thing as a purebred. When someone's homosexual, they like the same sex. So homo means same. Okay, so homozygous or a purebred, two same alleles. So therefore, these two are the same. They both are dominant. So this is homozygous dominant. All right. Then this one is homozygous, but they all are lowercase. So they are homozygous recessive. So homo means same. So make those letters the same. If it's homozygous dominant, you know they're both the same, and dominant is capital. So they'll be both capital letters. Okay. Let's go to the next vocabulary word. Genotype versus phenotype. So I want you to be familiar. There's only three combinations. So there are only these outcomes. So we have big B. That's homozygous dominant. So therefore, it will always show that dominant trait. It has no other one. So it'll be purple. So purple is dominant. Okay. So since you have a big B, little b, the dominant always expressed when present. So therefore, it will be purple. Okay. It has this recessive allele, but remember that a recessive allele is hidden if a dominant is present. So therefore, that's why that physical appearance, which means phenotype, is purple. Okay, now we get to the homozygous recessive. So both of these are recessive. So and they're the same. So the word that means the same is homozygous. So the recessive trait is white. So therefore, the plant is going to be white because the recessive trait is only expressed when both of the alleles are recessive. So boom. Okay. All righty. Then we go to the last thing, gametes. All right. Since we're talking about genetics and we need sex cells to make that offspring, gametes is a fancy word of saying sex cells. So there's two types of sex cells. You have your sperm cell. All right. And you have your egg cell. And in this picture, you will see that this sperm here is fertilizing, it's getting ready to fertilize this egg. Okay. Males have sperm and females have egg. All right. So those are sex cells, gamete sex cells. All righty. So remember these vocabulary words because this will be very beneficial going through this topic of genetics. All right. Good luck, guys. I hope you enjoy genetics.